right, it's a pleasure to be here on this beautiful day. This is great weather if you're an amphibian. Amphibians love water. I'm going to briefly talk a little bit about amphibians and a little bit about reptiles, and I'm going to concentrate a lot with the reptiles, talking about snakes. Okay? Because everybody likes amphibians, right? Everyone likes a salamander. I mean, who hates frogs? Anybody hates frogs? No. Toads? No. Turtles? Reptiles, turtles? No. Lizards? How about snakes? Ooh, that's where you draw the line, right? The only good snake's a dead snake. We hear that all the time, So you got nothing to worry about. So we do have some live reptiles. Here we have some turtles. We do have some snakes. So we'll be bringing the snakes out, and we'll be handling some venomous snakes. We'll be doing a little dancing. We'll be drinking strychnine. Feel that, beat. You ever see those videos of some of those churches that do that, and dance around? Yeah, down in Jolo. Yeah. Now those people, I don't want to get into religion, and I don't want to get into politics, because whenever you talk about snakes, it's like talking to people about religion or politics. But there are some churches that still use venomous snakes in the southern Appalachians and down in Kentucky and that. And some of those people have died, and some of them do get bit. And there are some snake bite deaths every now and then. So I mean, you do have to be very, very careful. But I'm not going to let you be handling venomous snakes. Unfortunately, can't do that. All right, now when you think about reptiles and amphibians, they're similar, but then again, they're very, very different. The salamanders are types of amphibians in West Virginia. We have frogs, toads, and salamanders. Those are the only amphibians we have in West Virginia. We've got a whole bunch of species of frogs. You can look all of this up. We only have 3 species of toads in West Virginia, frogs and toads. And we have a lot of salamanders. I think we have over 30 different kinds of salamanders. If you want to study salamanders, come to West Virginia. Anybody know why? Why we have so many salamanders in West Virginia? Because of the mountains. We have a lot of old mountains. The Appalachian Mountains are extremely old. At one time, they were taller than Mount Everest. You can believe that? And they're huge mountains. Over time, they wore down, and that combined with evolution split the salamanders up. So now we have over 20 different kinds of salamanders. Our biggest salamander in the state is this guy right here. Anybody know what this is? A hellbender. That's right. Why is he called the hellbender? Because he came out of hell. That's right. And when fishermen caught them, they would bend the line, and they would say, "Oh my God, what is this creature?" So they would cut the line and let them go and tell all their friends they caught some kind of demon. This is our biggest salamander in the state. There's, he is called the hellbender, the eastern hellbender. There's a few different species of hellbenders. We only have one in the state. There's another one over in Arkansas. It's called Ozark. I think it's called the Ozark hellbender, and that is federally endangered. This guy's not endangered, but we're keeping an eye on him because he lives in clean water. You have to have certain kinds of rivers, have to be certain kinds of rocks, nice and clean, no silt. So if you do have hellbenders in waters, that's a good sign. They have to have clean water. Yeah, question?
Where do we have them in West Virginia? Right
yeah,
now?
there's some mostly down on the Greenbrier River down there, some on the Cheat River, but they're usually associated where there's not a lot of work going on because they don't like silt. Okay, they're very, very flat. Usually if you have an animal in the water that's flat, they're designed to have a lot of water flowing over them. They're not shaped like this where the water's going to hit them. The water kind of flows over them. Okay? Very, very long-lived. They can live to be over 20, 30 years old. They're very, very slimy. They excrete, I guess is the word. There's a slime on the outside of their body, so if you do pick them up, they're very, very slippery. One characteristic about amphibians is that they do not have claws. They do not have claws. They don't have scales. Reptiles have scales. Reptiles have claws. but these guys do not. If you look at the bottoms of their toes, you might think they're claws, but they're not. Okay, I'll go ahead and pass this around. You guys can take a look at that. Yeah, they do have teeth. They do bite, but it's not going to hurt.
What do they usually eat?
These guys like to eat crayfish, slow-moving fish that they can find in the water.
We actually had one in West Virginia.
In West Virginia. Okay, yeah. So that is our hellbender. I didn't really bring any live salamanders. They're kind of hard to keep in captivity. But I just brought a few different rubber models. And no one makes good rubber models of salamanders and snakes too. So I think there's a cottage industry out there. If somebody could make good rubber salamanders, he might make a little bit. Not much, just a little bit. But this is just a red salamander that we have in West Virginia. Some of our salamanders live in the water. Some live along the water's edge in the riparian zone. Some live up on dry land too. But all salamanders, like all amphibians, need water. So when you think of amphibians, think of water. Reptiles, not so much. You think of a box turtle or a big tortoise, you don't think of water. Okay? Salamanders, amphibians need water. The word amphibian actually means two lives or both lives. And some people think that means that all of our amphibians need water to reproduce in, and then a lot of them come on land. So they're definitely tied in with that water. Another reason that people call them two lives is that the young amphibians don't look anything at all like the adults. If you saw a little tadpole in the water and you didn't know that those turn into frogs or toads or salamanders, you wouldn't think that. You think, what kind of critter is this? Okay? So amphibians need water, reptiles don't. This is our red salamander. Anybody know what's so special about the red salamander in West Virginia? It is our state amphibian.
No.
Yeah, the red salamander. Yeah, we had nothing to do with it. We wanted the Cheat Mountain salamander to be the official state amphibian, or the hellbender. Wouldn't that be neat to have the hellbender as our state amphibian? Anybody know what the state reptile is? The timber rattlesnake. Yeah, I have one with me, and we'll bring him out. And there's a neat story about that. That happened about, what, maybe 10 years ago, I think. It was an 8th grade class in Romney over in Hampshire County. And at that time, West Virginia did not have a state reptile. And it was an 8th grade class. I think there were 2 classes, and they voted amongst themselves. And out of all the snakes we have, all the turtles we have, all the lizards and skinks that we have, they said, we want the timber rattlesnake to be the official state reptile. So they voted, and that was it. They worked with their teachers, they worked with their state legislators, and it was kind of a lesson on how a bill becomes a law, or how the average person can influence politics and that. So anyways, the legislators voted on it, and the governor signed the resolution. So as of that one day, about maybe 10 years ago, I think it was, West Virginia now has a state official reptile, and it's the timber rattlesnake. So I brought the rattlesnake down, and he met the governor. All the kids got bussed down there. They gave him free lunch, and they had T-shirts with the rattlesnake, and the TV crews were out there. And I took the rattlesnake out of its cage and put him on the floor, and everyone backed up like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And it was totally nothing to worry about. But and then it was interesting too. The governor said, "Who owns this rattlesnake? Who owns the rattlesnake?" So I thought, oh my gosh, here I am, I'm going to get fired, you know. And then a radio reporter said, everybody owns the rattlesnake. And that's true, because we all own the wildlife in West Virginia. I don't own it, but everyone owns it. So in other words, you can't go out and catch a chipmunk and put it on eBay, or take a rabbit and, you know, sell them like that. You can't do that. Everyone owns all of our wildlife. Okay, so if you want to get into salamanders, as I said, come to West Virginia, look online. We have a lot of information about salamanders. We have one that's our Cheat Mountain salamander, only found in West Virginia. I think that's kind of neat. I mean, if you want to study this one salamander, you have to come to the state. You have to come to West Virginia. If you want to study rattlesnakes, you can go all over the country. But with the Cheat Mountain salamander, you have to come to West Virginia. They have a really neat life history. So that's just a little bit about salamanders. Frogs and toads, you can identify them by how they look and also by their calls. You know how birds have unique calls, mating calls? All of our frogs and toads do too. Of course, they're not going to be calling now because it's way past the breeding season. But all of our frogs, our American, all of our toads, what's our three toads? They're the spadefoot toad, the American toad, and the Fowler's toad. They all have unique calls. Okay? And you can get online and listen to all those. All of our frogs have different calls too. So you know how a lot of people will go out in the springtime and they'll listen for birds and that. You can go out to certain areas and listen for frogs and toads. A lot of these amphibians, a lot of our frogs and toads rely on vernal pools. Anybody know what a vernal pool is?
Over there for part of the year.
That's right, yeah. They're dry maybe half the year, but they fill up in the late winter and early spring. There's no rivers or ponds that feed these vernal pools. They're just like big ditches. And it's a race against time. The frogs will come there, salamanders will go there. Certain frogs and certain salamanders will go there. They'll mate, they'll breed, they'll lay their eggs, and then the parents leave, and those eggs are on their own. They have to hatch, mature, and then all the little critters have to be old enough to leave that pond before it dries up. So a lot of times raccoons will find these ponds, these roadside ditches, and there'll be thousands of tadpoles in there swimming around, and the raccoon just kind of goes there and eats them all. Sometimes happens, or sometimes if it's really, it all depends on the weather. If we get some hot weather and those ponds dry up before the young mature enough to leave, then that's it. That was not a very good breeding season. So those vernal pools, if you're ever out in the woods in the springtime and you might see some ditches on the sides of the road that were made by tractors or cars or whatever, and they're full of water, you don't necessarily have to fill those in and just look to see if there's egg masses in there in the springtime, and that just means that the salamanders or the frogs and toads are utilizing that. You can tell the difference between frog eggs and toad eggs. Frog's eggs are kind of a big mass of eggs. You can pick them up and it's like a big glob of jello. Toad eggs are kind of long. They're like a string of pearls. You pick those up and they kind of go in between your fingers. So the toad eggs are nice and long, long strings. Frog eggs, and also some salamander eggs are more of a gelatinous mass. Okay? And you can actually identify the species, but you have to kind of, get into it a little bit more and get some good field guides out there. So salamanders, frogs, toads, this isn't really a great place to be looking for frogs because it's not warm like down south. A lot of our amphibians and all of our reptiles, if you really want to get into reptiles or amphibians, that's also called herpetology. Herps, if someone says, let's go herping, it doesn't mean with the herpes virus or anything like that. It means we're going to go out looking for reptiles or amphibians. I get that every now and then. They say, what? You study herpetology? Isn't that like herpes and all the viruses, and what do you know about Omicron, the viruses? So anyways, I'm going to switch over now to a little bit about reptiles. And reptiles in West Virginia, we have turtles, we have lizards and skinks, and we have snakes. Okay? We don't have that many turtles. If you go down south, you'll see a whole lot more. I brought with me some turtles here. Probably the one that everybody has probably seen the most is this guy right here. Anybody know what he is? Snapping turtle, yeah. Why is he called a snapping turtle? Does he snap, you know? No, he bites. He bites hard, too. If you ever see one of these on the road and you want to get them off the road, don't pick them up. If you've never picked up a snapping turtle before, you'll be in for a shock, okay? You don't want to, if you do grab them, you don't want to grab them by the side, because they can easily come around and snap your fingers like that. And you really shouldn't grab them by its tail, but if you do, make sure your hands are way up here far. You don't want to just kind of pick them up like this, because they'll come around and nail you. And then I've been told that there is somebody in Randolph County that has a permanent speech impediment, because he was trying to take a selfie. He was going to kiss a snapping turtle. And the snapping turtle said, no, you're not. And what did the snapping turtle do? It like cut his lips in four. So don't play with snapping turtles, okay? If they do bite you, you're in serious trouble. Now, do they have teeth? No, they don't. But what's interesting about snapping turtles, in fact, I'll go ahead and pass this guy around. What's really neat about snapping turtles is their jaws. They have this little sharp kind of tooth-like part of their jaw. It's not really your teeth like we do. They don't shed their teeth. But if you feel this ridge out of their jaw, very, very sharp. And if you look too at their brain case, where the brain is, not much room, very, very tiny. But they've been around since the days of the dinosaurs. You know, and I like to make the comparison between snapping turtles' skulls having a small brain and humans, and we've got a big brain compared to our body. You think we're going to be around for millions of years like the snapping turtle has? I don't think so. So maybe the whole key is the smaller the brain, the longer we're going to live. Who knows? But anyways, that's my soapbox. But I'll just go ahead and pass around that snapping turtle skull. Fascinating animal. Now remember, he's a reptile, not an amphibian. And reptiles, some of their characteristics are they have claws, they have scales. Are they cold-blooded or are they warm-blooded? Cold-blooded. So what's that mean, cold-blooded and warm-blooded? Is their blood actually cold? If you were to take out a blood sample and measure it, is it could be really, really cold? No. All it means is that a cold-blooded animal can't regulate his body temperature like we do. Okay, we're warm-blooded mammals. Birds are also warm-blooded. So all that means is that a lot of the food that you eat is used to generate heat, right? Our body temperature is always about the same, about 98.7 or 98.6 or whatever. Everyone's probably had their temperature taken these last few years more times than you want to. But if your temperature goes up a couple degrees, that means you're sick. You have a virus, right? Your body is fighting that virus by making everything warm. Viruses don't like hot weather or hot temperatures. If your body temperature goes down into what like the outside ambient room temperature is, you'd be in serious trouble. We'd have to rush you to the hospital because you'd be going into hypothermia. Reptiles, their body temperature fluctuates all over the place. Okay, all these turtles, all these snakes, their body temperature is pretty much what the outside air is. So in this room, if it's maybe 70 or so, that's what their temperature is. Your temperature is still 98. If your temperature was 70, you'd be, that'd be it. We'd be sending you to the funeral parlor. So anyways, that's our snapping turtle. And these guys don't have to eat like all of our reptiles and amphibians. They don't eat every day. They can go weeks and weeks and weeks without food because they don't need to generate all of that heat like we do. Another interesting turtle that you may find in West Virginia is this one right here. This is a shell. I'll go, I can pass this around. Anybody know what kind of turtle this is? Yeah. Eastern box turtle. Now he's got a new name. Now he's called, I think, the Eastern woodland turtle. But, you know, box turtle is a box turtle. Anybody know why he's a box turtle? Does he like to fight and put the gloves on? No.
Can completely enclose itself.
Exactly. He can completely enclose himself in his shell. That's his protection. He lives on land. He's pretty much the only turtle that we have in West Virginia that lives primarily on land. Okay? So there's a lot of predators out there that want to eat this guy. Foxes, skunks, raccoons, coyotes, bears, all kinds of critters want to eat this guy. So if he's out in the woods and a fox comes after him, he's going to completely enclose himself. He has this little hinge right here too, and that hinge kind of folds up. So that encloses his front feet, and he just brings in his tail, and he brings in his rear feet. So he completely gets himself in a nice hard shell. So, and it's kind of hard to bite something that's curved like that too. If he was flatter, a fox could easily, grab him and take him away, but it's kind of hard to get a good grip on a round shell like this too. So these guys can live to be well over 100 years old. Okay, box turtles can live to be very, 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 very old. I'll pass him around too, and you can look, these scales, remember another characteristic about reptiles, and not amphibians, reptiles have scales and claws. Amphibians don't have scales and they don't have claws. Okay, think of a frog. Does the frog have scales? No, frog's skin is really smooth, kind of wet. These guys are more scaly. So if you count the number of ridges or these little lines on any one of these individual scales, these are called scutes, the scales that cover the shell. If you count those, they'll give you a rough idea how old that turtle is. The older turtles will be very, very smooth, so you really won't have an idea how old they are, but you'll know that they're very, very old. So you can look at the scales, look at those little ridges. It's kind of like if you cut a tree down and you look at a cross-section of a tree and you count all the annular rings. That gives you an idea how old that tree was. Same thing with these guys right here too. Now, our turtles, are they vertebrates? Do they have a backbone?
Yeah.
Yes, they do. I'll pass another shell around here too. You can see that the turtle vertebrate, or their spinal column, is fused to the shell. The shell is bone. The shell is actually living bone. The shell gets bigger as a turtle gets bigger. Okay, they don't shed their shells and find new ones, like hermit crabs. They're born, very, very tiny, and as they get bigger, the shell gets bigger, and those scutes, or those individual scales on the outside of the turtle shell gets bigger and bigger as the shell gets bigger. Now, turtles have two parts of their shell, the top part and the bottom part. Anybody know what those parts are called? Top one, it's called the carapace, and the bottom part is their plastron. So all turtles, even that snapping turtle, if you look at him, the top of his shell, the top carapace is big, it's kind of armored, and the bottom isn't as big. The bottom part of the shell, the plastron, isn't as big as a box turtle. And that's because, the box turtle, he needs that protection. Our turtles that live in water, their protection is just getting in the water and swimming away. Snapping turtles don't have to enclose themselves up because they're snapping turtles. They'll stay in their own. I mean, you go after a snapping turtle and you're in for a fight. You're probably going to lose. Okay, so box turtles, you can tell the difference between males and females by looking at the turtle or looking at the bottom shell, looking at the plastron. Male plastrons are going to be concave like that too. So that'd be a really good question on the test. They have two turtle shells. Which one's male, which one's female? You can easily tell. Males have that concave and the females are flat. Now the reason is, okay, I'm going to talk just a little bit about the birds and the bees with the turtles. When the male mounts the female, he won't fall off, he won't slide off. That groove fits the female shell. So that's another way you can tell the difference. Also, you can look at the tail length. Box turtles, males will have longer tails. that's where the male parts are, and he has to utilize that when he's mounting the female. Okay, so that's all the birds and the bees will talk about, you know, turtle sex and that. So anyways, males concave, females are flat. This is about as big as they get, but they live to be very, 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 very old. Their home range is extremely small, very small. Some of our amphibians actually migrate. Some of our salamanders will migrate, but they don't migrate like birds do. You know, birds will fly thousands and thousands of miles. Salamanders might migrate maybe only 100 yards, depending on the habitat. Our spotted salamanders will spend most of their lives in the woods, and then in late winter, early spring, they'll migrate to where they were born. They have that really strong site fidelity where they'll mate and reproduce where they were born. They have that strong homing instinct. Once they're all done mating, lay their eggs, they'll go back up into the woods. So these guys really don't migrate. They just have a small home range, about the size of maybe 2 football fields. So if you find one in your yard or in an area, you can go back year after year after year and probably find that same turtle. So they don't wander off. I'll go ahead and pass these around here too. And then over time the shells, once they die, and then in the woods, those outer shells will fall off because they're no longer being, there's no nutrients going to them, because this is solid bone. Okay? So the shells are made by the bone in that too. So just remember that these guys are vertebrates. They have a backbone, just like we do. And different turtles have different kinds of carapaces, the outer, the upper shell, and plastrons. This is from a stink pot turtle found in West Virginia, and this is from a red-eared slider. So they'll all have a top and a bottom carapace and plastron. So you can see how they're all different sizes, and you can identify turtles by just looking at their shells.
Is there going to be a shell identification part of the test?
I haven't seen the test. I really don't know.
The test has not been written yet.
Ah, there you go. So I guess that means yes.
Or no.
What's the difference between a painted turtle shell and a red-eared slider shell?
Okay, well, I think I have. See which ones. We'll get. Well, let's see. This is a painted. Here's a red-eared slider. Here's a red-eared slider, and then the older ones will kind of look like this. But the red-eared slider is called red-eared slider because he has that red patch right behind his eye. Okay. Red-eared slider. Now these guys are actually invasive. Anybody know what that means, invasive?
They disrupt the natural habitat.
Exactly, yeah. But you can find, these are mostly found down in the southern part of the U.S. The red-eared slider, also called pond turtles. I remember you could get these things at carnivals. You know how you would take darts and throw them at whatever, trying to break or rings on bottles, and if you won, they'd give you a turtle. Red-eared slider, really neat, you know, passed around. Now he does have claws, like our reptiles, and you know it's not going to hurt you, but they do have claws. He has a backbone. This is a red-eared slider, little red-eared. He'll get to be about maybe this big. Any idea how old this guy is? Probably
80 years old.
a year or two, maybe, if that.
We got him June of this year,
June.
and we got him from the Appleburn State Fish Hatchery. They were one of their ponds, so I'd say a year or two. Yeah.
A year.
I'd say 2.
Just kind of to give an idea of how.
Yeah.
Is there a turtle in their shavings?
Will they live as long as the others? Like,
Probably not. No, I wouldn't think so. So these are invasive. Yeah, it's mostly on the western part of the state. In fact, we get calls every now and then with people actually getting these online somewhere, and then they bring them home as pets, and then they really don't make very good pets. And then they say, well, we don't want these anymore. So they don't call us, or they'll set them free. And you never want to set free an animal you got in the pet store, because you don't know exactly where it came from or any kind of diseases. So here's a little painted turtle. I don't have any big shells of the painted turtle. He looks similar to that greater slider, but he's not doing much.
He has no red hair.
Right, he has no red hair. And also, well, here, let me just, if you look at underneath, if you look at the plastron, you can get to see the difference. That's the redder, and that's the painted turtle. Yeah, so painted turtles, they get their name because they kind of look like they've been painted. So here's a little painted turtle, and there's a little redder slider. Now, once you handle turtles, it's not a good idea to stick your fingers in your mouth. You know, they do carry diseases. And there's a state law now that you're not allowed to sell turtles that are under 4 inches big. And you know what the reason is that you can't buy a small turtle that's under 4 inches? It's because kids stick them in their mouths. Not my kids. Here's another neat turtle, and this is one of our 2 map turtles that we have. I think we have 2 in the state, don't we? Have the northern. Yeah. So this is a map turtle. Yeah, and they have these little ridges on the top. He does have long claws, and supposedly, if you look at the top of his shell, it kind of looks like a little map. How it kind of has, you know, all the contours on a topographical map. Look at him that way, but he has these little ridges. I'm not quite sure why they have those ridges. This is one of our map turtles that we have. And these are native to West Virginia. Just kind of checking you out.
I have a question. Is it true for males and females in turtle species, like female claws as opposed to male claws are longer and shorter? Is that a characteristic?
I think so, yeah. The male claws are, I think, a little bit longer.
Longer so they can hold on to the
Exactly,
female.
yeah.
Turtle babies. Ready your sliders? Yeah. Female and the male would get in front of the female with the weight.
Yeah.
That's his main thing.
Okay, so as our map turtle.
Is the painted turtle native as well?
I think it is, yeah. I think, and we have 2 map turtles. We have 2 painted turtles. We have the eastern and the midland painted turtles. Okay, now I'm going to dry my hands off here. I'm going to talk about my favorite snakes. Okay. Now, how many kinds of snakes do we have in West Virginia? How many species? We have about 22, 23. People argue all the time. Here's just a little poster of most of the ones that we have. Not all of them are on here. So we have about 23. How many are venomous? 2. Or here's a little trick question. How many are poisonous? 0. That's right. There's no such thing as a poisonous snake. But that's because this was made by the federal government. This was made by the state government. We correct that. This was made by the Corps of Engineers. Okay. So we have 2 venomous snakes. Anybody know what they are? Copperhead and the timber rattlesnake. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and start bringing out some of these snakes here.
Why aren't they considered poisonous?
There's a difference between an animal that is poisonous and an animal that is venomous. Venomous animals have to have something on their body, some kind of body part, to actually pierce your skin. So it has to go inside your skin. So our snakes have fangs. Bumblebees and wasps and hornets, they're all venomous. They pierce your skin. Stingrays and jellyfish, sea urchins, all kinds of animals in the ocean that will actually pierce your skin to inject that venom. Animals that are poisonous, that poison is designed to be ingested. So they'll secrete a poison on the outside of their body, like poison arrow dart frogs, or certain toads, or certain salamanders. If a predator bites them or gets near them, they'll secrete a poison on the outside of the body. That predator will bite that animal, and that poison gets inside that predator's mouth. And then he starts foaming at the mouth, and they'll start, drooling, and then they'll spit that animal out. Like a lot of native tribes in South America will take their arrowheads and rub them on the back of poison arrow dart frogs. That gets the dart frog really upset. He secretes a poison. It gets on the head of the arrow. So when they go out and hunt, they're using poison-tipped arrows. So it makes whatever they're trying to kill die a lot faster. So the venomous animals actually have to pierce your skin. Okay. So if you're bitten by a snake and you look at your skin and there's no blood or no pierce marks, you're fine yet. Nothing to worry about. Okay, copperheads, one of our two venomous snakes, look like this. Okay, if you can remember the shape right here, this looks like an hourglass. Or if I turn it sideways, it looks like a big bow tie. If you take that hourglass or bow tie and you shrink it and you bend it and you put it on the back of the copperhead, it looks like he's wearing this bent saddlebag type of marking up and down his whole body. Okay? So that's one way you can tell them apart. Just look at those saddlebags. Now, they may not be as symmetrical as this. They might be kind of off like that, but 9 times out of 10, that skinny part is going to be on its back. So if I was a copperhead, I have this hourglass marking up and down my whole body like that too. Okay? There's only 3 snakes in West Virginia that have marks that go from their back all the way to their belly. There's this guy, there's the rattlesnake, and there's a water snake. But if you just remember the hourglass shape or bow tie up and down its whole body. Now, the reason I'm going over this and over this and over this is that I'd say 95% of people in West Virginia cannot identify copperheads. We get calls all the time. We get pictures all the time. People with their phones will take pictures of snakes that are usually chopped up in a couple pieces, or their head is all smashed. And they're saying, what kind of snake is or was this? And 9 times out of 10, it's not the copperhead. It's either a milk snake or a garter snake or a young black rat snake, but not the copperhead. So remember, this is one of our 2 venomous snakes. Guess how many people in West Virginia have died from being bitten by the copperhead? Only in West Virginia, we'll say in the last 50 years. 1? It's actually 0. To my knowledge, no one has died from a copperhead bite. There was a lady not too long ago. She was in a garden club, and I think she was bitten by one, but they think she might have had a heart attack rather than so it wasn't necessarily the snake. But anyways, you're not going to die from a copperhead bite. Okay, that's because their venom's not that strong. If you took the top 10 most deadliest snakes in the world, they're not in West Virginia. They're not even in the United States. They're not even in North America. They're all over in Asia, Africa, Australia. They've got the really, really dangerous ones. Here in West Virginia, we only have the copperheads and we have the rattlesnake. Now, what about the water moccasin? Everyone sees a snake in the water and they say, that's got to be a water moccasin. It's not, no. Here is a model of a water moccasin, also called a cottonmouth. It's called a cottonmouth because his mouth is lined in white, and he opens up his mouth, it's all coiled up, opens up his mouth, and that's usually enough to scare away any kind of predator. He is venomous, but he is found he is found, I took a little range map of where you'll find the water moccasin, also called the cottonmouth. All the states that have lines through them is where you'll find this guy here. Now we have this guy, the water snake, the common water snake, the banded water snake, the eastern water snake. They call them all different kinds of names. But we have the water snake. He looks an awful lot like the water moccasin. He is non-venomous. The water moccasin or cottonmouth is venomous, okay, but we don't have these in West Virginia. The water snake will bite you. He's aggressive. I've never seen a calm one. You get near them and most of the times they'll swim away if they can, but if you try to grab them, they will bite you. They'll bite you more than once. They're a very aggressive snake, but they're non-venomous, okay?
Do their range overlap?
I think they probably do. I think they do, yeah. That's a real good point. So if you live down south, that's where all the venomous snakes are. You know, we only have one rattlesnake. I think Texas has 10 different kinds of rattlesnakes. There's a lot of, there's 5 different kinds of copperheads, and we only have one. There's over 20 different kinds of rattlesnakes, and we only have one. So West Virginia really isn't a great place to study snakes. It is for salamanders, but not for snakes.
Jim, if you see a snake swimming, is it like the water snake, or can any snake swim?
Any snake can swim, but probably, I would think it's most likely our water snake. They're found in the water, or they're found along the sides of streams and that. Can they bite underwater? Sure, that's how they catch fish. They'll usually bite a fish and then drag them over to the side and then swallow them. Do you have a question?
We only have one water
Oh.
snake.
Yeah,
in West Virginia.
yeah, as far as I know, only one water snake. Now, you may find some snakes in water, but only one is normally found around water snake, and that's his name, the northern water snake. Okay, now, this guy that I'm going to bring out, this live snake, the right one. Everyone always asks me, is it venomous? Or usually they say, is it poisonous? And no matter what snake I have, I say, no, it's not poisonous. It's got nothing to worry about. And they'll look at a rattlesnake and say, that's a rattlesnake. I say, yeah, it's not poisonous. It's venomous, not poisonous. And then they say, will it bite? And my answer to that, will it bite, is we'll find out, okay? I've been bitten by all these snakes, except the venomous ones. And the reason I get bit is because I'm doing something stupid. You know, I'm picking a snake up. Any snake will bite in self-defense. Okay, the last time I picked this guy up, he just had enough of me. He bit me. Did it hurt? Not much, but it's kind of unpleasant. But anyone know what kind of snake this is right here?
Why?
Anybody want to guess what kind of snake? This is a milk snake. That's right, M-I-L-K, milk snake, or eastern milk snake. Now, guess what milk snakes like to drink? Not milk. Not milk. That's right. They don't drink milk. Why is it called the milk snake? We don't know. Some people say that his belly looks like milk. It's like, yeah, I'm not drinking milk that looks like that. Maybe like a cow or something. Some people think too that if it gets scared, it poops out this white fluid that's really, really smelly. Why would a snake make himself real stinky like that? So you don't eat them. Yeah, why does a skunk spray you? It's defending himself. Any wild animal will bite. Okay, if you caught a chipmunk or squirrel out there, you pick them up, will he bite? He probably will. Okay, and he's defending himself. Now, all snakes will stick their tongue out. Like even some of our lizards do that too. They'll stick their tongue out. What are they doing? Are they getting ready to bite you? They're smelling, or they're tasting the air. They're exploring. They don't smell like we do. Their tongue goes out, and they have a forked tongue. Okay, and it's really interesting how they can control either side of their tongue. They can make one prong of that forked tongue move faster than the other. If they want to see what's going on over there, they can flick that one over to that way. And their tongue goes out, forked tongue. A lot of people think, ooh, forked tongue, that's a sign of the devil, that's evil. No, it's just more surface area. They can pick up more scents in the air, more molecules, whatever's floating around. There's all kinds of stuff in the air out here. His tongue's going out, picking all that stuff up. He brings it into the back of his mouth, then he reinserts it into the roof of his mouth. There's a little channel there it slides into. Now, at the end of that channel is an organ. Anybody know what that organ's called?
Jacobson?
Jacobson, very good. I'm impressed. Very good. The Jacobson's organ or Jacobson's gland, and that tells his brain what he's actually tasting. Okay, we can't do that. We can't do that. You can stick your tongue out all you want and wave it around, bring your pack in your mouth. You're not going to taste anything, except maybe what you had for lunch. Yeah. Another thing about snakes that people don't like is that they always stare. Snakes always stare. They stare because they have to stare. They don't have eyelids. They don't have eyelids. Every time they want a blink, they can't. So what happens is when they shed their skin, they have a scale that covers their eye, and that eye scale comes off. So in a sense, every time they shed their skin, they're like growing a new set of eyelids. Okay? So if you're going to be in a staring contest with the snake, you're going to lose. Okay? They don't have ears like we do. They feel the vibrations. They feel it through their jaw and their body. I have a neat little activity we can do if there's time. I don't think we'll have time though, how you can take a coat hanger with these long strings and plug your ears and bang the coat hanger up against something hard. You feel the vibrations coming up. So that's how snakes sort of hear. But here's our milk snake. We don't know why he's called a milk snake, except I remember once I was giving a talk at a state park, and a lady came up to me afterwards and said, I know why they're called milk snakes. I said, please let me know. I thought maybe her last name was Milk, and maybe her great-great-great-great-grandfather was the first naturalist to actually discover them. And then she says, no, the reason they're called the milk snake is because they go into your house. And I thought, what? Go into your house. And they only go into houses that have little babies. I thought, uh-oh, I don't like where this is going. And then she said, the snake finds where the baby is sleeping. If it's upstairs, it goes up the stairs of the house, finds the nursery, goes into the crib, and it's only, little babies. They find the baby, they go into the baby's mouth, down the baby's throat, into the baby's stomach. They drink the milk that the mother gave that baby before she went to sleep, turns around, leaves the stomach, leaves the throat, leaves the mouth, leaves the head, leaves the crib, leaves the house, and comes back about once a week or so to do the same thing. And I said, ma'am, I'm sorry, that's not true. Where did you hear that? She said, my grandmother told it to me, so it's got to be true. I said, no, you don't do that. No, you don't. So, all kinds of old wives' tales about snakes. One is that they'll come up and they'll hypnotize you, and they'll bite their tails and roll down hills, and they'll breed with other snakes. A lot of people think that black rat snakes will breed with rattlesnakes and become hybrid and all that. No, they don't do that at all. So this is our milk snake, very, very common, found all over the state. Now, we have over 100 different species of fish. If you go fishing to your favorite fishing hole or stream or lake, are you going to catch every single kind of fish we have in the state? No, you're not going to catch that, no. Same thing with snakes. They're not evenly distributed all over the state. Some of these snakes live on the western part of the state. Some live underground. You have to go digging for them. Some live in the northern panhandle. But this is the one guy that's pretty much found all over the state, our milk snake. It gets to be maybe a little bit bigger than that. All snakes are predators. That'd be a good question for going in my chest. Just like that movie Alien, where the thing comes out, snake comes out of my chest. All snakes are predators. There's no vegetarian snakes. So if I were to give him a slice of pizza or an apple or a carrot, he'd starve to death. Snakes in West Virginia eat all kinds of food. Some eat mice, insects, rodents. Some eat birds, bird eggs. Some eat fish. Some eat crayfish. Some eat salamanders and frogs and toads. And some of them specialize on all those different food items. And some snakes even eat other snakes. This guy, the milk snake, is known for eating other snakes. Okay, when he was a little bit smaller once, I wasn't thinking, and I put in a red-bellied snake in the same cage with this guy. And about a day or two later, I looked for the red-bellied snake, and it was gone, and he was a little bit bigger. So he had lunch. So anyways, nutrition, yeah. That is our milk snake. I'm glad he didn't bite me. So far, so good. This next one I'm gonna get out. He almost guarantees to bite me. He is a real common one. We'll see what happens. But usually when I pick him up, what he does is he starts thrashing. He thrashes around, poop goes flying everywhere. Usually gets all over me. But I had him out over the weekend, so he's all pooped out. Literally. But anybody know what kind of snake he is? Very, very common. Garter snake, the eastern garter snake. People call these garden snakes, but it's our garter snake. We feed them earthworms. I feed them little goldfish that you get at pet stores. Eats little baby tiny mice. But he could be pretty temperamental. I guess I don't want to say he's mean or he's very vengeful, but he just doesn't like to be held. He just would rather be left alone. He also musks you. He'll make himself real smelly like that too. But now he's trying to calm down a little bit. So remember, they're cold-blooded reptiles. They're looking for heat. And my hands are nice and warm. Inside this room it's a little bit cooler. Now, his tongue's going out again. He doesn't know where he is. He's never been here before. I put him back in his cage and he'll stop doing that. And he just always, I think he's always thinking that he's escaping. Because I just put my hand over hand, so he thinks that he's slowly getting away. It's been a good day so far. Now, he has round eyes. And that's kind of important if you want to tell the difference between a venomous versus a non-venomous snake, but you got to be careful, and I'll give you a few little tips here. Okay, let's all read the saying together. Ready? If eyes are round, no venom found. If eyes are slit, don't get bit. Now that works in West Virginia. The reason I say this is that if you see a snake and has a round eye, like this guy right here, that round pupil, if it's round, it's going to be non-venomous. If it's shaped like a slit or like a cat eye, that's going to either be the copperhead or the rattlesnake. Now you got to be careful. It only works in West Virginia. There are some other venomous snakes in the U.S. that have round eyes. There's a coral snake that has round eyes, but he's not found in West Virginia. And I've got a...
Are those the ones that look like corn snakes, or?
Yeah, here's a model of a coral snake. I'm gonna put him back. He's getting a little antsy. That's right. Yeah. All right. So that round eye business does not work with this guy, our coral snake. There's a couple different species. Once again, you can see they're down south. We're way up here, so we don't have our coral snake. He has round eyes. And there's a saying, if red touches yellow, can kill a fellow. Red touches black, venom lack. Or if red touches black, friend of Jack. There's a couple other of these different color snakes. They're not found in West Virginia. There's a type of a milk snake and a type of a king snake that are red, yellow, and black. But they're the non-venomous ones, the red and the black bands touch. And that's a phenomenon in nature called mimicry, where a lot of your non-venomous animals will look like the venomous ones. So if you're a predator and you see a snake that is red, yellow, and black, you're not going to know red touches yellow, stay away from that one, because that's got the venom. So we don't have to worry about them. They have round eyes, not found in West Virginia. They're nocturnal, and it takes a lot to get them mad. You really have to bother them before they will bite you. But if you are bitten by one, if you happen to be unlucky enough and you're in the southern part of the U.S., their venom is more of a neurotoxin. It affects your nervous system. So, and their teeth aren't very big. They're to the back of their throat. I've read stories about people out, berry picking down in the south, and they feel something and they thought, oh, I just got stung by something, and then they don't think anything of it. Then hours and hours later, their eyelids start, drooping, and their speech starts to get slurred, and their heart rate slows down. So then you have to rush to the hospital because your nervous system is shutting down. So you don't want that to happen. So the next snake I'm going to get out is found in West Virginia, but it's not really found around here. It's found more over on the eastern panhandle. And this is a corn snake, C-O-R-N, corn snake. Now guess what corn snakes like to eat? Rats, mice, not corn. That's right. Everyone just says corn. So why is it called the corn snake? Maybe because it looks like corn, or maybe it was found around corn fields, or corn silos where farmers would store their corn. If it's not eating the corn, what's it doing around the corn? Hunting the rats, hunting the mice. That's right. So if you're a smart farmer and you have non-venomous snakes around your barns or outbuildings or silos, you want to leave them there. They control rodents. You guys that live on farms, the last thing you want is some, flock of mice coming and eating everything. So you don't want to kill these non-venomous snakes. Now, if this was venomous and if it was on the ground and you remember, okay, if eyes are round, no venom found, eyes are slit, don't get bit, are you going to pick him up and say, is that a round eye or is that a straight eye? No, you don't want to do that because they can bite you, right? So how close do you want to get to a snake before you're too close? The rule of thumb is really, really simple. Look at the snake, in your head, guess how long it is. Most people, if they saw a snake like this, would say, oh man, that snake was this long and it was this big around and it was striking out at me and all that. No. So this snake is, let's say, 4 feet. So then you just take that distance and divide it in half. So 4 feet divided in half is 2. And when I say divide it in half, don't use a shovel or a machete or a hoe to cut them in half. Just use your head. 4 foot, half of 4 is 2, and that's as close as you want to get, 2 feet. You don't want to get closer than half of their body length. It's actually, I think, a third of their body length. Just to play it safe, half of their body length. So if a snake is 6 foot long, let's say you think you saw a 6-foot rattlesnake and you want to get close to it, half of 6 is 3, right? So as long as you're 3 feet away or more, you're fine. They can only strike out half of their body length. Okay? Now there are some snakes in other parts of the world that can spit their venom, but we don't have those in West Virginia. We don't have the cobras and the mambas and the horned vipers and the gaboon vipers. All we have is just the rattlesnake and the copper. So this is our corn snake. They come in over 200 different color varieties. These were the ones that were really popular in the pet trade years and years ago. Now, West Virginia has some new rules and regulations about our reptiles and amphibians. So I would definitely get on the website and check those out. Now it's illegal. You can't have any snake as a pet. Okay, as of, I think it was March this past year, you're not allowed to have them. Now, if you do have some, if you had some before that, you're fine. You can get, grandfathered in, but you're not supposed to. Look, he's going up my arms.
So we
Why do you
can't
think?
buy a snake as a pet?
You can, but not the native ones.
Okay.
You can buy boa constrictors and pythons and all that, but you
So
can't
like
buy any
corn
corn snakes. No, not anymore. Yeah, because what was happening is that people were getting them like this guy right here, and then losing interest in them because they don't really make great pets. You can't really play with them, and then they'd set them free. So all the genes from snakes that weren't found in West Virginia are now being in our natural populations. Okay, now I'm going to get out the venomous ones. I have time still, don't I? Or
Yeah, for this, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, you're fine.
okay, I got.
You started 15 minutes late, so you should be
Okay,
allowed to
now.
have time.
So whenever I work with animals that might be dangerous, you want to use the right equipment, okay? So you can use a pair of tongs like this, a nice little tong, also good for picking up garbage. You don't have to lean over. Okay. Or I can use a hook like this. It's nothing more than a golf club with a bent wire that's jammed in here, and then they charge you $50, $60 for something like this. So save your old golf clubs. And let's get a little wet here. It'll be all right. So what I'm going to do, let's dry this off a little bit. I'm going to stick a model of a copperhead in the center here, just so the copperhead that I bring out will have something to kind of climb across. He's not going to know that this is a model of his cousin or whatever. He's just going to think that's some kind of rock. I'm just going to put this like here. Make sure it's nice and dry. And get the copperhead out. Oh yeah, he's ready. So, now, don't do this at home, you know. So what we're going to do, you can see that the state spares no expense.
You got a nice pair of welding gloves too.
I'll put this over here just in case something bad happens. And so I got my eye on the door, so that's great. I'm the first one out. So here's our northern copperhead. And remember, no one has died from a copperhead bite in the last 50 years. Their venom's not that strong. And since you guys are here, I'm going to try something special here. I'm going to try to put them in a tube. See, I've got to make sure I pick the right size
Who wants to put
tube.
their eye at the end of the tube?
Not me.
Because I just want to make sure you guys can see what a copperhead looks like.
Oh, so you
close.
wanna pass them around, that's why you
Yeah,
wanna.
yeah.
I was gonna say, why in the world would you put them in a tube?
Just spin it.
There we go. Get in there. A little bit farther. There we go. Okay, now, whoops.
That tube's not small.
I'll get another size tube.
A little bit smaller.
Only when you're demonstrating.
Yeah.
Hey, the struggles of a live demonstration, you know, things can always go wrong.
What can possibly go wrong? Yeah. Or what did W.C. Field say about kids and animals, working with animals?
Yeah, never do it, yeah.
Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab on this part of the bottom part of the tube and then hang on to that and we should be okay.
As long as he can't turn around.
Yeah, as long as I grab the right end. And if I happen to trip and fall, you're on your own. So anyways, here's our northern copperhead. You can see the slits for the eye. And also copperheads and rattlesnakes, if you look in the front of their face, they have extra holes. And those are called pits. And that's used for sensing heat. And so it's really important to look at those dark bands. See that hourglass shape? And he's got a, not too much markings on it. Yeah, but that's kind of, I mean, that is triangular, but it's not really like the rattlesnake. That's kind of a judgment call. There's our northern copperhead, and you can see the hourglass, that saddlebag.
I'm sorry, sit in front of me, between me and the snake anytime you want.
There's our copperhead. Remember, no one has died from these guys in 50 years. But I don't want to be the first. I don't want to be the first one. So you can see that hourglass marking. Looks like it's wearing saddlebags. Yeah, see their eyes. See the slits in the eyes. Oh yeah, that's a real good point. I like to tell people that the snake won't kill you, but when your parents get the hospital bill, your parents are going to kill you. Because one,
like $10,000 a dose?
it's really, really expensive. Well, I've read that, well, the way, I don't want to keep lifting the snake around. the way that they make the anti-venom is really expensive, and it takes a long time. What they'll do is they'll get these copperheads, and they'll take their heads and they'll put them over jars, and they'll actually bite the lip of the jar, and they'll actually kind of bite that jar. So they collect their venom, and then they'll inject it into horses, or maybe sheep. See, the horses or sheep. And then over time, that animal builds up a resistance to that and of that venom. They take the blood out of that horse or sheep. They don't actually spray it a little bit. That him? Oh yeah, that's him. Does that smell like cucumbers? It smells like snake. Yeah. That's great. Even muscle. A lot of people think that copperhead smell like cucumbers. They don't. That's not cucumber smell, is it?
Really bad smell.
Got a really neat slits of eyes.
I would not want to eat that.
See, they always like markings. So, anyways, here's our copperhead. So back to the anti-venom. So the companies that make the anti-venom, they sell it to the hospital for about $2,000 a vial, and then the hospital turns around and charges you about $15,000 a vial. And you may have to get up to six of those vials. It all depends. You smell that kind of smells like cat? Okay, so I'm going to put him back and get out one more. The hard part is sometimes getting him out of the tube. So the bite from one of these can cost you, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 on up. Very expensive. I was talking with an emergency room doctor from West Virginia who had retired, and I asked him, did you ever have to give the anti-venom? And he said no, he never did. So a lot of times doctors won't do anything, they'll just kind of treat the symptoms. Because once you start getting the anti-venom, it's very expensive. And then I remember, I was just the other day, I was talking with another doctor, and I asked him, did you ever have to give the anti-venom? He said a few times, but the people had problems. Well, first of all, most of the people bitten by venomous snakes are under the influence of alcohol. So that plays a big role. So he was saying some of the guys that he had to treat were not in the best of shape, and they were all under the influence of alcohol, and they had a bad reaction to the anti-venom. So their hands and arms really swelled up, and then once your arm swells up so much, then they have to cut it, not because of the venom, just because of all that pressure on your veins and that. So take-home message is don't mess with venomous snakes, okay? They're not going to die, but you just can't afford it. Yeah, if you are bitten by a venomous snake, there's a real good chance nothing's going to happen. Those are called hollow bites or dry bites. That means that the snake did bite you, actually pierced your skin, but it did not inject its venom. They can control that. You'll know right away whether or not it's a dry bite or a hollow bite. And the symptoms is that your hand or your foot is going to feel like it's on fire. It's really going to hurt. Here's this next guy. I think you all know what he is, by what he's doing. Well, not really. He is our timber rattlesnake. They come in all different sizes, all different colors. Some are almost all yellow. Some are almost all dark, like he is. I'm gonna try to tube him too. A lot of times he doesn't want to have anything to do with it, but he shakes his rattle 50 times a second. Let me pass around. Stay there. Don't move. I'll go ahead and pass around a rattle. Here's one right here. You can take a look at the rattle. That rattle is made out of the same material as our fingernails. And if you count the number of segments on that rattle, that just means how many times he shed his skin. They don't shed their skin as often. No, he's not cooperating. So when he rattles, what's that mean when a rattlesnake rattles?
Leave him alone.
Leave him alone. So is this a smart thing to do?
No.
Where's his mother? That's right.
Thought you'd have him better trained than that.
That's right. But he's done this a few times. I'd like to just...
No.
I'll get them a little tired out. So they shake their tails very, very fast, 50 times a second. The front of their faces have those pits, and those pits are used for sensing heat. And they can detect, and this is unbelievable, they can detect as little as 3/1000ths of 1 degree temperature change. 3/1000ths. That's amazing when you think about it. Okay? It's amazing you got in the tube. All right. So, I'm going to walk around here. You can see the slits for the eyes. Got that extra hole. Yeah.
No, I don't want that one to see. I want to take pictures, not that.
So this is our timber rattlesnake, one of the 20 or so different rattlesnakes we have in West Virginia, in the United States. It's interesting because they can't hear the rattle. They can't hear that. They just kind of feel the vibrations. You see the slits for the eyes. Timber rattlesnakes are pretty easy going. I've been around a lot in the wild, and I've never really felt threatened. Okay, that's his rear end right there. He's gonna let you know.
Well, he feels threatened.
So if you feel them, they're a lot, rougher skin. It's interesting too because rattlesnakes don't give birth every year like mammals do. You know how cats and dogs and mice and rabbits can give birth every single year. A lot of people think that rabbits are born pregnant, They're constantly producing. These guys, they have to be about 7 or 8 years old, before they'll give birth. If they don't give birth every year, every 5 years or so. So our official West Virginia state reptile.
How long do they live for?
Yeah, they can live to be 35, 40 years old, I think, even longer than that, yeah. Of course, in captivity, they can probably live a little longer because there's, no predators. Yeah, probably hawks, I would think. Not too many when you think about it. Yeah. So when you hear that rattle, it just means stay away. It's a warning. Just take 2 steps back. A lot of times when people hear rattles, they panic, they run, and they smash into a tree. They're so scared. And it's interesting too because a lot of your non-venomous snakes will shake their tail. So if you hear a rattle, it may not be a rattlesnake, it could be a non-venomous one. So if you count the number of segments, that means how old it is? No. How many times you said it's Does anyone have any questions about snakes or? Yeah. If you look, yeah. Yeah, remember that all snakes are completely covered in scales. When they shed their skin, scales come all the way off, or the skin comes all the way off. If you look at the bottom of a snake's belly, it has big scales that go across. All snakes have that on the sides and the tops are smaller. So if you look at the belly, they come all the way across. And when you come down to their vent, or their rear end, right there, if it continues to be a single scale all the way down, that's either going to be the copperhead or the rattlesnake. If it's single all the way down, like all of our snakes, and it hits that vent, and then it becomes two scales, a row of two scales from their vent to the tip of their tail, that's going to be a non-venomous snake. I think I have some snake skin that I can show you. So the copperhead and rattlesnakes have single scales going all the way down from the tip of their head to the tip of their tail. Of course, rattlesnakes, when they shed their skin, their tail won't be on there. There'll be like a little hole where that tail used to be.
So how do they add the segments? Like how does it, is that how it is?
Yeah, it just, when they shed, it kind of grows just one more segment
Okay.
at this part down at the bottom.
I was confused on how it got.
Yeah. It's kind of like, human hair. The oldest part of our hair is at our tips, right? Because it's growing from our skull. Same thing with a snake tail. The oldest scale, or the first little scale, is on the tip, and then the newer ones are made every time the snake sheds its skin. So these do fall off. They are somewhat, brittle, and that's no problem for the snake because it will grow a new little section every time it sheds. And they can shed, if it's eating a lot and it's pretty healthy, it can shed 2-3 times a year. So it will grow, 2 of those sections. This guy sheds about maybe 4 or 5 times a year because I keep him in captivity, and he's a pretty good eater. Eats a lot. Yeah, even when a rattlesnake is born, really good question, they'll have one little tiny nub, and they can shake that, and they can make a little bit of noise. And as they get older, the tail gets bigger and bigger and bigger. There's all kinds of snake bite kits out there. The best thing to do is just go to the hospital. A lot of these little snake bites have tourniquets in them. They want you to put the tourniquet on, and they want you to make the little X's where the wound, and they'll apply these little suction cups on there and supposedly sucked out the venom. This is called the cut and suck method. Don't use that. Just go to the hospital, okay? A lot of times, remember, snakes can only strike out half of how long they are. So most of the time, you're bitten on your hand, or on your upper or your lower arm, because what are you doing? You're catching the snake, you're throwing rocks at it, you're trying to grab it by the back of the neck, and that's when you get bit. Most of the time you're bitten on your hands, on your fingers, or on your foot. If you stepped on it, or if you're kicking on it, or you're doing something like that, or on your ankle. It's really rare to get bit from your knees up. So if you're bitten on your wrist and then you apply a tourniquet and you start cutting and sucking, you're going to end up cutting a vein or an artery. And you're going to bleed to death. Okay? You're going to cut a nerve. You're going to lose all feelings in your hands. I remember once I was giving a talk, and this lady raised her hand. We were talking about snake bite, and she says, "I am an emergency room nurse, and if you come into my emergency room," and she looked at me right in the eye and said, "If you come into my emergency room wearing a tourniquet, first thing we do is we cut that thing off. We want the blood to flow." Now, if you were involved in a chainsaw accident and you cut your hand off or something like that, then you want to put a tourniquet on. But snake bites, no tourniquet.
I've got a question for you.
Sure.
I work with Ward Hollow Wildlife Habitat down in Charleston. We had a south-facing rock face that was covered with vines. Well, we went in and we cleared it off to make a basking area for the reptiles. How did they know that we did that? Because they found it.
They did find it.
How did they figure that out?
Yeah.
That just blows my mind. We cleared off the vines and the reptiles came.
Yeah, all the snakes came.
How did they know?
They must have been nearby. I would think that there were probably some snakes in that home range or in that area.
Yeah, there are.
And
It wasn't just snakes either. It was
all kinds of lizards, all
yeah.
kinds of critters.
But
Yeah.
how did they know that we cleaned it off? That just blows my mind.
Good question. Yeah, they were probably hanging around, years and years ago, and then they would slowly use that, and then one of them probably found it, the other ones followed them. Good question.
Yeah, but I don't know how they found it, how they realized, oh, hey, we can hang out here now and get water. You know?
Yeah.
But they figured it out.
And that brings up a real good point, is a lot of rattlesnakes will use the same dens year after year after year. So a lot of people know where these dens are, where they're hanging out for the winter. So a lot of them will cause all kinds of problems. I've heard of people pouring gasoline inside a den and the snakes come out and then they kill them all. And females will use certain areas for giving birth. They have special rocks that are nice and warm. They'll go out there and that helps with the gestation. So, rattlesnakes, if you have rattlesnakes, they've probably been there for years and years and years and years. Someone have a question again?
Is there a way to age how old, like, snakes are?
Yeah, but the rattlesnakes, of course, the bigger the rattle, the more times it shed, so it's probably been alive a little longer. But I don't think there's a really good way of getting a really good estimate. Some people will look at the scales, and there's a ratio or certain formula by the length of the snake and how many scales it has. That might give you an idea, but I don't think there's a really good way to, actually find out the exact age of a snake. Not to my knowledge. Yeah. Yeah, the question.
I just have a quick question, because you said this is going to be herpetology central for the test, right?
Uh-oh.
It is going to focus largely on reptiles and amphibians, but it's not limited to.
So
A large
you're still
section.
going to study the skulls, the
Yes.
wildlife regulations, helps, all that?
Yes, all the stuff that was on the test last year is fair game for this year.
Because I know we have some people that are brand new and they
Yep.
don't know what that is.
All the videos are online from last year, so make sure you go on to the wildlife portion of the Envirothon, West Virginia Envirothon website. All the old videos are on there, all the information from previous years are on there. I have not taken anything down. All the information is there, so even if you're new, this is gonna be the majority of it. I'd say a good 50%, the other 50%, maybe less, will be generic wildlife, may ask for some skulls, track ID and stuff, but this is gonna be the majority. Do you guys have any questions about anything for the tests, anything up here? We're gonna slowly transition into forestry, bathroom break, yeah.
What about like live birth snakes here versus egg birth?
Yeah, there are some snakes that lay eggs, and some snakes give birth to live snakes. It's that viviparine, oval viviparine. That our rattlesnake and copperhead, they give birth to live snakes. So if someone's trying to sell you some rattlesnake eggs or something like that, they just don't exist. Okay, and there's other non-venomous snakes that will also give birth to live snakes. Our garter snake, they can have up to 50 live, snakes. 50 little babies come out. And then some snakes lay eggs, like our milk snake and rat snake. So I don't really know if there's any rhyme or reason, but just remember that our copperhead and rattlesnakes, they give birth to live snakes. And the very best first aid kit you can carry if you're bitten by a venomous snake comes in 2 parts. It's this and this. This is a cell phone or a phone. Call the hospital, car key gets you there. All you have to do, okay? No tourniquets, don't cut, no ice, no alcohol, no electric shocks. I remember reading an article.
What if you're out backpacking?
Yeah, if you're out backpacking,
Away from
just
hospital.
try to get out as quick as you can. You might maybe put a little compress or something on that wound, but just, try to remain calm if you can. And just have people carry you out, and then you'll know right away. I mean, if you're walking out after being bitten by a snake and you don't feel anything, that was a dry bite. But if you do feel like your leg's on fire or someone took a hammer and smacked you, then just either have them get help and bring you back. If you have to get life flighted out, if they have to call in a helicopter, make sure you enjoy that helicopter ride. It's going to cost like $40,000, $50,000. How much?
$26,000.
$26,000.
I do.
Wow.
Not me personally.
Yeah. So take home message: don't mess with venomous snakes.
Shouldn't you go to the
I got a
hospital?
question.
Oh, sir.
I read an article once that said you could determine whether a snake was poisonous or not by the shape of its
Shape
head.
of the head.
Is that true?
Sort of, but I mean, just by looking at a copperhead, and if you looked at that corn snake, like what's triangular shaped in that, you know, the rattlesnake definitely has more of a triangular shaped head, but some of our non-venomous snakes also have triangular shaped heads, and the non-venomous ones can trick you. If they feel threatened, they can make themselves look bigger, they can make their neck skinnier, so it looks like they have a triangular shaped head. So that one you kind of have to have a little experience. You kind of have to know what's a triangular shape, what's a spear-shaped head. But the best thing to do, if you see a snake and you're...
Leave them alone.
Leave them alone, that's right. If you see a snake, just leave them alone. They belong out in the environment like any other animal. They control rodents. Rodents carry all kinds of diseases that people can get. You know, Lyme disease, bubonic plague, hantavirus, all kinds of diseases that people can get. And snakes can eat the mice that carry those. And you don't want mice in your house. I mean, they chew on wires, they cause all kinds of problems. So if you see a snake outside, it just wants to be out there. It's kind of unusual to see a snake out in the open because a lot of predators like to eat them, so they like to stay hidden. If you flip over rocks or logs, sure you might find them. You might find all kinds of critters because that's their cover. But most of the times, if a snake comes into your house, it doesn't want to be in there. It just goes along the sides of your foundation, thinking it's a wall, and it finds a hole, usually where a wire goes into the foundation, or some kind of exhaust duct from a clothes dryer, electric wires, any hole in your foundation. Sometimes they go underneath doors that are open and that. They don't want to be in their house. They want to be out. So if you do see a snake in the house, just take a broom and you can shove them out that way.
All right, last question.
I was always told that even if you had like a dry bite, you should still go just to get it tetanus shot. Is that true?
You probably should, yeah, just in case. Yeah. But I think the last tetanus shot I had was a year or two ago. I probably wouldn't go. Just it's so expensive. But yeah, just to play it safe. Yeah. And like I said, you know, a lot of doctors don't have that experience. Yeah, so you're kind of like, you know, rolling the dice because some emergency room doctors have never treated snake bites. Some won't treat you at all, they'll just look at the symptoms. Because once they start giving you the anti-venom, you can develop an allergic reaction to the serum that's in the anti-venom, you know, from the sheep or from the horses or whatever it is. So that can cause even more problems. But you know, if they do give the antivenom, we should be okay. But then, you know, once you get the hospital bill, good luck, you're on your own.